Well, welcome back everybody for our morning plenary. Now, one of the things we are very keen to try to do with all of these sessions is to start when we say we're going to start. I did emphasise we were going to get underway at 11:30. So appreciate early days at the moment, but if you could have a listen out for those bells in the foyer and try and give yourself enough time to be back in your seat before we get to the starting blocks, that would be great. Anyway, welcome back everybody. I know a number of people are making their way to their seats at the moment, so please just bear with us as we get underway. Now, in this next session, we are going to be turning our focus to bringing the Statement of Rights to life. Our panel here are going to be sharing their perspectives on what the Statement of Rights actually means for older people, for workers and for providers, and just what rights-based care actually looks like. Once again, we're very, very keen that this is a conversation. There'll be a conversation amongst our panel first of all, but we want it to be a conversation with you as well. So we're going to be taking questions in this session. And remember, to submit a question, please go via the conference app, or of course, as quite a number of people did, and it was great to see people coming up to the microphones here in the auditorium, either down here at the front or halfway up. Please do go to the microphone and ask your question from there if you need to do that. Now, I think pretty much everyone is getting into place, so we will get the panel underway. Everybody is here on the stage, so let me introduce you to our panellists. And our panellists, when I mention your name, if you could just give us a little wave so everyone knows who you are as I mention your name. So on our panel this morning, we have first of all Emma Jobson, Executive Director, Regulatory Strategy and Policy at the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission. Andrea Kelly, Interim First Nations Aged Care Commissioner. Craig Gear, OAM, Chief Executive Older Persons Advocacy Network, OPAN. Pat Sparrow, Chief Executive Officer, COTA Australia. Selen Akinci, Diversity and Inclusion Manager, Multicultural Communities Council of Illawarra. And Nicky, Chief Executive Officer, LGBTIQ+ Health Australia. Now, Emma is going to take over to facilitate this discussion, and as I hand over to Emma, please do make our panellists feel very warmly welcome. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Richard. So welcome everyone here and online to a session that I think was going to generate much discussion. This session is about practical perspectives on how to deliver on the Statement of Rights, what's expected, what's already underway, and what many providers already do, and how we prepare to uphold these rights in real-world settings. So all of us want, of course, older people to have the best possible aged care experience. And we hope today sparks useful reflections on where you're at in your own journey and what's needed to strengthen rights upholding care across different service types. So with our panel's diverse experiences, we'll hear insights and practical examples that connect with your work. So after our panel discussion, we'll open up for audience questions, and I really encourage you to either step up to the microphones or, as in the last session, submit questions via the conference app at the time. But before we get started on our panel discussion, I'm going to give a brief introduction to the Statement of Rights. So a key finding of the Royal Commission into Aged Care Quality and Safety was the direct link between systemic problems and the failure to put older people at the centre of their care. It found an absence of a strong consumer voice and recommended that when overhauling the system, the voices and choices of older people must be heard and acted on so that they can receive care that meets their expectations. We've had consistent feedback, including from our peaks and advocacy groups, that placing older people's rights at the centre of their care is vital to creating a system based on safety and quality. So the new Rights-Based Act seeks to do just that. The reform agenda we've all been working on since the Royal Commission responds directly to these recommendations. We understand that under the current legislative framework, the Charter of Rights, the Quality Standards and Code of Conduct are about person-centred care. But the new Act does go a step further by placing older people's point of view, their rights at its foundation. It is about what each individual can expect from their aged care experience. So through the Statement of Rights, the new Aged Care Act enshrines older people's rights by placing these at the heart of the system. This creates a shared language and common understanding of the importance of older people's rights and how we must work together to uphold them through all our respective roles. Providers also have a new obligation to demonstrate they understand the rights of older people and have practices in place to deliver care in accordance with their rights. So this is about older people's voice and choice, acknowledging older people as individuals, providers working in partnership with older people to deliver their care in a way that respects who they are, listens to them and supports their choices, ultimately delivering care and services in a way that meets their needs and preferences. In practice, this is about how we acknowledge each person as a unique individual, how we make sure people can easily access information, have their privacy respected and communicate their wishes. It is about empowering the older person to make decisions about their own life and have their decisions respected. We will know when this is working, when older people feel safe, that they are treated with dignity, their culture and their identity is respected. So as the regulator, we play a key role in regulating a system that upholds older people's rights. How we undertake our functions is critical to building sector capability and public confidence that older people experience rights-based care. We are embedding rights-based practices in all our regulatory functions, including how we manage complaints and feedback, register providers and supervise providers in the market, how we regulate workers, and importantly, how we support, engage and educate older people, also providers, workers and responsible persons. Every decision we make, action we take and conversation we have is informed by older people receiving aged care and its impact on upholding their rights. As the regulator, we're committed to continuous improvement across the sector in safeguarding and upholding the rights of older people, and we expect that providers will also make this commitment by listening to the older person and what they want, leading your organisation's culture and workforce, and practising rights upholding care. We will not make assumptions about the preferences of older people, and we and yourselves will ask and listen to them. So we all need to continue to work together and with older people to achieve a shared understanding of what rights upholding aged care looks like. In reflecting on your preparations to embed rights in your organisations, your systems, your processes, with your workforce and how they engage with older people and deliver care, we ask that you consider how you will listen to older people, demonstrate leadership and build a rights respecting culture, how you will lead your workforce to do the same, how you will know that older people's experiences are consistent with their rights. How is feedback from older people informing your continuous improvement? How will you know you are delivering culturally responsive care? Rights upholding care means that older people feel safe, respected and heard and active partners in their care. It means staff receive appropriate training on rights-based approaches to care, how to talk to older people about what they need and how they want their care delivered, and how to support them to weigh up risks and make decisions. It means when something goes wrong, the older person's concerns are listened to, you communicate openly, agree solutions and actions to restore trust and relationships so it does not happen again, and this is at the heart of achieving a restorative outcome. We recognise there are times when the rights of individuals are understood within the rights of other older people as well as workers. In such circumstances, rights may need to be balanced so the rights of other people are not limited and comply with other laws such as workplace health and safety. But ultimately, this is about respecting and reflecting older people's individual needs and choices, supporting their decision making so that they receive the aged care experience that they expect. So thank you. We're now going to hear from our panel, and I'll just join them. Hello. Thank you. I'm going to start with Andrea on the right here, and I'm going to ask each of you to briefly introduce yourself, your role and your organisation, and share with us an opening observation on what the Statement of Rights look like in practice to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Andrea Kelly. I'm a Warramunga Larrakia woman from the Northern Territory. I now live on Larrakia, I am from Larrakia country. I live on Ngunnawal country. I'm the Interim First Nations Aged Care Commissioner, and I've been in this role about 18, 19 months now. So part of my role, one of the functions is to advocate for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And I've been doing that over the past 18 months. And, you know, while the Statement of Rights is a very welcome and a first step towards caring for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders and giving them the voice, I think we've still got a lot to do in that space. And I'll continue to advocate for that. And I know we probably will touch on this a little bit later, Emma, but one of the critical components of the Statement of Rights for my mind, and having spoken to a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people since I've been in this role, really is around their ability to connect back to their country or island home. So that is a really key piece within the Statement of Rights. I think the other thing for me, and again, the listening to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people over the last 18 months has been critical, and in what they see from the system and what they want from the system, from aged care, no matter where they live, whether it was remote, very remote, or regional, here in Melbourne or out at Shepparton, both places I visited. So I think the key thing I want to see from the Statement of Rights is the shifting attitudes towards Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and not imposing your values on how Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people engage in the system. So I'm keen to see what that looks like post-November. And I know we've heard it this morning, both from Liz and Anne, was around the decisions, enabling them to make the decisions about their care. And I think Anne said it really well this morning, just talk to people. And I know that we do that well, but there still are areas, particularly with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, that we don't do it well. And we need to think about that. Obviously, dignity, respect, they're all words that we say. I know we mean it, but I think we've got to make sure that we do it in practice. One other area, and I'll hand back, is around the complaints and what that looks like in practice. The fear of an older person making a complaint, the fear of an older person's family making a complaint, and when they leave the service, what happens to them. So the complaints aspect, I'm really keen to see what that looks like in practice and how we can make sure we get that right for older people.
Thanks, Andrea. Craig, did you want to?
Thanks. Yeah, so Craig from OPAN. OPAN's an organisation that's all about the rights of older people. We want to see, I suppose, a society where older people are listened to, are heard, and their rights are upheld. But people only come to us when their rights aren't being upheld and something's going wrong. And we provided that support for 52,000 people last year. And I don't know whether it's because more people know about us or more people are calling our aged care advocacy line, which is 1800 700 600, just remember that, 876. Or people are feeling more confident because they see change happening, so it could be that, or just more of the issues are coming to the floor. But when we delve into that data and look at what's sitting behind it, residential care, communication issues. Home care, communication issues. CHSP, communication issues. So that's kind of the key to it. And I sort of remember Jim Carey, who was on the Council of Elders, and when we were down in Canberra with him before the bill went before Parliament, and he was asked, why do we need a statement of rights and why do we need this new act? And he sat there and he paused and he went really quiet and he said, when you build a new house, you need a solid foundation. And you need to get the concrete right and the foundation right. And the statement of rights is that foundation. And so someone said to me yesterday, they said, but we've had a Charter of Rights. So why is this difference between a statement of rights? And haven't we just changed the word charter to statement? And no, we haven't, because there's actually obligations now in this, and there is practical ways that this will make a difference in how conversations happen, but about how care is delivered as well. And that's what it's going to come down to, is the really practical day-to-day, the little times, the little interactions that'll make the difference. It'll be when someone's saying and coming to deliver care to someone in their room that they've knocked on the door and asked, can I come in? How do you want to have your shower done today? What would you like your care to be today? And then afterwards, have I delivered to your expectations? So I think that's what, it really ties back to Standard 1 as well. So I think that's what everyone in this room is really committed to really exceeding the standards, not just meeting them, but exceeding them. And so we're tying it back to the individual. And that seems to be a theme that's running through so far, is this individual. Finally, just another practical example is on communication. I think of Rosemary, who's in a residential facility in New South Wales, and she said to me, with the monthly care statements and the monthly and my bills, why can't they just come to me and talk to me about them first before sending them to my daughter? I can understand them, I can remember that, and then I can say, yes, you can send it on afterwards. So just really practical things around that, basic communication, and it's in the little daily moments that the statement of rights is really going to come to life.
Thank you, Craig.
And I'm going to agree with my colleagues. I'm Pat Sparrow. I'm the CEO of Council on the Ageing, or COTA Australia. We represent older people over the age of 50. People are a little surprised that we start at 50, but if you were watching the media last week, you will have seen that discrimination in the workplace indeed starts at around 51. You're seen to be older and some people don't want to employ you, and also impacts people under 24. So one of our big tasks that we want to do is actually to stamp out ageism, and that's a theme that I will come back to through some of the answers to the questions today. We represent people right across the spectrum. So aged care is one area that we work in, but we also work in health, we work in employment. I've been making the joke that I think I was a bad person in a previous life because I had to go to a tax reform summit on Friday, but it's really important, and it's going to be a big part of the discussion the country's going to have around productivity, and it's going to impact on older people, and so we get involved in all of those different things. I've been in and around aged care. I guess the passion for my career has actually been improving services for older people. Started doing that as a state bureaucrat, have worked with providers, and I'm very honoured now to be representing older people and looking at it through that perspective. I think the words you'll hear over and again today are listen and respect, and I think that's how we do it. We listen to people and we act on what they say. And often I think we listen, we half-heartedly listen, we don't actively listen, and we don't follow up. And, you know, I've had And some examples of that older people have talked to me about, you know, I said there was an error with my medication. Nothing changed as a result because I think they thought that I was old and I didn't understand. And it wasn't until the prescriber came in and said, no, I've made an error, that any action was taken. And so I think, you know, it's not just about the listening, it's about what you do with the information that that person gives you. We're facing a mindset shift, and so I want to frame it this way for you. We are all an older person waiting to happen. Some of us are closer to it than others, but I think you have to bring it back to that kind of level and think about, then not everybody is the same, just as you're not the same as the person sitting next to you. The things that really matter to you might be quite different from the person two seats down from you. We actually have to stop othering and just talking about the older people, and we do that a little bit, we other people, and then we take away what it is to be human and what sorts of things matter to people. So I think the biggest challenge that we've got to get to where we want to be is to adopt this mindset shift that sees everybody as a person and doesn't make assumptions about them and listens to what they say and acts on that appropriately.
Thank you, Pat. Selen.
Hello. Hope there's an interpreter in the room, just in case if I forget English. Okay, I'm Selen from a Multicultural Communities Council of Illawarra, so that I'm overseeing several programs like PCAC, ACQUS, Care Finders, or Sector Support Development, so which we are helping individual organizations to be more inclusive through or trainings or resources, and helping individuals coming from multicultural and refugee backgrounds to navigate in the aged care system. So for me, the statement of rights, it's not just only document that list of the rules, but that we need to felt and understood has been mentioned. So how they are into day-to-day lives of elderly people, so especially from multicultural background. So in my work, like we've seen many individuals, they are really don't make any complaints, they don't say no, or they are not questioning services. Just think about someone coming from a multicultural background or refugee background, even they are living in Australia for some time, they are receiving a message, it says your regular care worker has been changed. So that care worker, to build some trust, relationship, they know your life history. For someone coming from the Australian background, they may have a confidence to say, hang on, what is happening? I don't want this change, or why this change is happening. So, but from multicultural individuals, there is a real fear that they can be labelled as difficult, or they have fear of losing their services. So because of that, they stay silent. It doesn't mean it's an agreement, but kind of a survival mechanism for them. For service providers, the practical solution might be encouraging individuals not just for making a complaint, but as Craig mentioning, the communication. So how we, the building a culture, how we communicate, how we are making decisions that affecting those people. So it's not just only interpreter, it's not only speaking the same language, they are very important, but the building really genuine relationship and communication with them. So as PCAC, we are holding roundtables with service providers and community leaders, and then there are very great examples and not expensive examples. They are involving individuals into service delivery, how they are, delivering their meal. They are making informal communications or consultations with individuals. So, so just changing your culture in your organization to understanding and respecting called elderly people.
Thanks, Selen. Nicky.
Thank you. So, yes, I'm Nicky Bath, and I sit in the CEO role at LGBTIQ plus Health Australia. I use she, her pronouns. And LHA, as we're fondly known, we're the peak body in LGBTIQ plus health and wellbeing. And I think that in regards to what does the statement of rights look like in practice for me, I mean, it's all of the things that have been said around, looking at the individual, recognising difference, But I'd really like to see the words on the page of the Statement of Rights sort of dancing into life, whereby there's an actual real understanding of who people are, and that across the Statements of Rights is put the lens of what's that like for people with diverse sexual orientations, gender and bodily diversity, because it's different, as it would be different for somebody from a CALD background, and looking at what all of those intersections mean for the older person. I think one of the challenges we will get onto the challenges, but when I think about the Statement of Rights in practice, is that you've got to know who we are. And one of the biggest challenges is the way in which you capture data, and one of the ways in which you undertake assessments. And I understand, and I witnessed it at a panel at a conference not that long ago, where I was challenged to stop asking you to be asking questions on sexual orientation, sex and gender, and variations of sex characteristics. And you really, for this Statement of Rights to be in action for LGBTI older people, those questions have to be asked, because you need to know who we are. Otherwise, there are assumptions that will be made, because all of the systems that are set up are actually set up for cisgender heterosexual men, and we don't fit into those categories, as do many, many other people. And so that first engagement from the very beginning, we need to know that it's safe for us to be who we are, and for that Statement of Rights to be entrusted into whether you're providing home care or resi care. And so, yeah, how do we really bring the words on the page to life? And you're not alone, because LHA is here, our member organisations are here, and we can make that easy and fun. And so I think that's where I'll finish. Thank you.
No, thank you, Nicky. I'm going to move on to, we've got some questions coming through the app. So, and this first question, we're going to jump right in. I hear this question a lot. So, what is the best way for providers to balance dignity of risk and the Statement of Rights and the inherent risk to quality and safety of some decisions? Does anyone want to put their hand up?
I'm going to jump in on this one to start with, because I talk a lot about, it was really interesting in constructing and discussions with Mel as the Act was being developed, about those bits which could easily become carve-outs, that you kind of met the, is it work safe for someone, is there no dignity of risk, are we going to put someone at risk, those sorts of things. And I think where we're going to have to shift to is understanding this role of intersecting rights, that no right is absolute, but we are trying to, I suppose, privilege the right of older people and then have conversations with them about the implications. It's around a lot about informed consent. Have we actually sat down and had a conversation to say, if you eat that meal and you've got swallowing difficulties, you could choke? Now, do you know the risks and those sorts of things, and going through those? Or if you're doing this for someone else, what that might mean, and it's that intersecting of it where we're going to have to get more sophisticated about and sit with uncomfortableness and the greyness of it. We have to balance it, and we have to actually understand that there will be risk, and there's risk in life as well.
Thank you, Craig. Did anyone have more to...
I can only support that. I mean, it really does have to be a conversation. It has to start from the basis of respecting that the older person can make a decision, rather than, it's a decision that we have to make, and to really understand why they want to do that thing. And as Craig's saying, have that conversation and respect that they will think through what you say. So, if you go in and just say you can't do it because it's too risky, but actually respecting that people can make decisions and respecting that they will think through the information that you provide to reach their final decision, I think is going to shift the conversation significantly.
Can I just add to that I think from a sort of LGBTI perspective, for people who are receiving care from your services now, they've taken risks every day of their lives. For trans people walking out into the street, gay men were criminalised. And so it's also understanding the context of risk, I think, is really important, and the context of harm. So understanding from that person's perspective what the risk threshold is, because there's been a lot of risk taken on the journey to where they've got to be sitting. And so for them, the risk may be not very much at all, given what the risks have been previously.
And the conversation should be the same whether it's in residential or home care, but of course in home care people will make decisions and enact them because you might only be going in for one or two services for one or, for a period of time. So it's a little bit of a different conversation too when someone's living in your residential care facility than the conversation that you might be having with someone at home who for the majority of the time is managing themselves.
I think they're excellent points, that this is in the context of people making decisions about their lives, and that just continues. The next question is similar. The rights of older people are important but not absolute. So, for example, some preferences or wishes may not be practical to implement or may infringe on other people's rights. When is it acceptable to limit or constrain someone's rights? Not a dissimilar answer. Does anyone want to have a...
I think it's not a dissimilar answer, and I think what the Act does allow is that obviously there has to be some balance. Just as, you wouldn't allow yourself or you wouldn't allow, someone in your family to do something that was really going to hurt another person. I mean, I think there are some practical limits on that, but again, it's about the conversation, and I'm struck by what Craig's saying about what they get on their advocacy line. It's all about communication. So I think having that discussion, and if there is a decision that's jointly reached that something can't happen and it can't happen, then I think being really clear about that and explaining exactly why in terms of the impact that there is on other people or on the service is really important.
Okay, so there's another question here around communication. While we understand communication is the key, as a provider, how do we balance the family communicating on the client's behalf, and because of cultural issues, the clients don't speak up for themselves? We don't want to assume anything. Do you want to go?
I guess there is a little bit education for the families as well. So because in multicultural communities and individuals, as I mentioned in the beginning, so they don't have some confidence to talk behalf of themselves. So because they rely on their families, or maybe is that they are bringing some kind of trauma. And then family structure is like that. In some cultures, the genders are making decisions. So in that case, really involving the family members and then educating them about the rights is very important too.
And this is probably one where Anne mentioned earlier on about supported decision-making and the supported decision-making framework that's coming, not just about registering supporters, but about what that means practically. I think this is going to be one of our biggest challenges, is how does that work, not just for workers and how do workers, I suppose, champion people to make their own decision, but how do we train families as well so that they respect their family members' right to make their own decision as well. It's one of the things we're getting out a supported decision-making toolkit to older people and families to help upskill them, but also for providers. But I think it's going to be one of the challenges and the shifts for us as a sector, again, to be privileging the older person's voice in this.
The intentions, so the intentions of the family members might not be.
Good.
It is good.
Yeah.
They really want them to good, but they don't know how. So.
Just wanted to add, it's not really just a challenge for the sector. And I said I wanted to talk about ageism, and maybe now is the time to talk about ageism. And I don't know if people sort of really think about it. We don't, in fact, but we are actually an ageist country. And there are 3 types of ageism. And one of them is our own internalised ageism, and we limit ourselves with what we can do. And you hear people say, I'm too old to do this or that or the other. They may not be. They may have some other reason they can't do it. The one that we see play out in health within aged care is benevolent ageism. It's absolutely not coming from a bad place, but it's assumptions that people make, whether you make it as a care worker, whether you make it as a family member, that somehow you know, mum can't do that because of her age. Mum can't make that decision because, you know, she's a little bit forgetful now. She hasn't got dementia, but she's got a little bit of forgetfulness. So mum can't make those decisions. And when we do that, we take away people's agency, which is then what sits at the heart of, you know, the challenges that we have. So this making assumptions and then acting on the assumption rather than the reality of what the older person is and what they want to do is really important. And then we see the third one, just to cover that off, is systemic ageism. We know that systemic ageism is when you see, an example would be banks don't actually like to lend money to older people even if they can afford to pay it back. So that, you know, there's some regulation or rule or something somewhere which means that that doesn't happen. So you see those three levels play out, and we don't think about them very often, but it does mean that we take people's agency away. And the Human Rights Commission did some great work in aged care, where they did a 90-minute workshop, and the workers who went said, we're not ageist, we work in aged care because we love older people. And after the 90 minutes, they went, oh, actually, I think the best example that came out of that was one of the workers said, I yell at everybody because I realise I'm yelling at everybody because I don't think they can hear me, rather than finding out if the individual can hear me, or do I need to stand in front of them so they can see that I'm speaking. And the good news is that when you think about it and you do a little bit of work on it, it changes quite quickly. So those people who went to the workshop had changed behaviours in the workplace. 3 months, 6 months follow-up afterwards. It had changed the way people looked at them. So one of the things that I think we need to do is to actually all undertake some ageism training, because you will be surprised, and I do it all the time. I say things myself and you go, hang on a minute, that's ageist. But it's such an underpinning then in how you view people and how you support people and how you do respect them and listen to them and give them their agency back. So I know that's a sort of a long answer to that question, but I think it's such an underlying factor that we have to come to grips with as a country, but also as service deliverers.
I was just going to pick up from a cultural perspective too, the kinship system that also operates in Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander families and communities as well. The decision maker in the room might not actually be the decision maker. So again, that's the need to understand how those family structures operate. And again, that comes back to communication, understanding how the kinship system works. And that doesn't apply everywhere. I get that, but that's critical as well, because that's where providers will run up against issues in terms of the decisions of the older people.
Thanks, Andrea. Yes, Nicky.
I think this is, it's easy for me to sit here and sort of say, oh, well, you can be doing this and doing that with regards to working with a family, because I think it can be very challenging. And from an LGBTI perspective, what can also happen is that we have what we call chosen families. So quite often we find that people are ostracised from their families, and then the families can sort of reappear as that person ages. And what we have is chosen families, so people who are very close to us, who sort of have those family representative roles towards us. And so you could be managing biological family, chosen family, and the individual. But I think in regards to also what you were saying, Pat, around ageism, we also have to really understand that those families and the aged care sector still will have within it transphobia, homophobia, biphobia, as well as, their own views around bodily diversity. And, that will play out also within resi settings where you've got other residents who will be, homophobic, racist, all of those things to manage. And it is simple, and it comes down to communication. But I also think that there are mechanisms. So it's also, if that person has a volunteer coming in who can also start to advocate for them with the families, or are there roles for for example, like our full member organisations, if you built relationships with them, what other role can they play as that mediator? Because I think some of this terrain can get very tricky.
Thank you, Nicky. We've got a question here for you, Andrea. Can you give some practical examples of how providers can help First Nations people connect to country, especially when their home country is not where they're living now?
Yeah, and this was certainly something that a lot of older people and their families raised with me and continue to raise with me, is about having to move off country to access services, or they choose not to access services because they don't want to leave country. So, you know, a couple of practical examples, I guess, is how can we reconnect them back with country through our services, or through your services, taking them back to country. Sometimes people just want to put their feet on country and know that they're safe. So how can we facilitate that? And I know in every community it's not going to be easy, because some people do live 600-700 kilometres away from where they are accessing services. But trying to make sure that, and again, this is just about talking to them. How do, you know, you're connected to your country. How do you want to maintain that? What does that look like for you? You know, you will probably get, I don't want to be here. I want to be back on my country. I heard a lot of people say to me, you know, we don't want to access aged care because we want to stay here. We want to die on our country. And again, that's not, for some people, that's not going to be easy or practical because of the care that they need. But where we can facilitate it as a system, you know, we should be making the most of that. And that, again, you know, that's from a regional and remote perspective. And I always draw on an example here in Victoria, where you've got only 2 Indigenous specific aged care residential, of course, that are miles apart. And so if you can't get in one, and your only other your only other choice, if you want to access an Aboriginal controlled service, is miles away from your home. So how do we make sure those 2 services are connected, that those families can be connected? Again, context is everything, you know, they're miles away. But then people will say, well, in remote is miles away as well. And that is true. But I think we need to think of, well, how can we do this, as opposed to how do we not do, you know, finding ways of not doing things as opposed to finding ways of doing things. The only other thing I would probably pick up, and this kind of comes back to the statement of rights as well, I think for residential it will be a little bit tricky, but certainly for support at home, I think we've got a really positive opportunity to shape that around the individual. I think it will be a bit more challenging for residential, but certainly for the individual to stay at home, remain at home. But again, how do they access those services if those services aren't available in community?
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. We have a question here. It's distressing to continue to hear our elders and their supporters are frightened of retribution when raising a complaint. Any thoughts on how we combat that fear, as I've heard that a lot during my 30+ years in aged care?
I grabbed the mic first because I'm such a big fan of complaints, and I think it's a really important mechanism. And I was at a conference a little while ago, and I said, I just remember people walking around wearing, you know, if you want to lose weight, ask me how badges, or like T-shirts. And I think that could be a badge that's worn to say, if you've got a complaint, let me know. And I think it's about how do we really change the framing of how do we talk about complaints. It's a really important feedback mechanism. I think if we can make it so that complaints are seen as feedback, then the severity of those complaints as they escalate get also looked at quite differently. But they're such an important voice, and we really need for people to feel empowered, safe and able to make the complaint. But for it to be really spoken about and demystified as this like really great big dark challenge to everyday practice, you know, and seeking feedback. And when people say something negative, say, you know, that's like giving a complaint. That was easy, hey? You can, you know, and build on that. It's really, really important.
And I think it is about then, like you're saying, Nicky, about then how you walk the talk in the writer. What does staff talk about the Statement of Rights? And the Charter of Rights was, yes, it was stuck there. The Statement of Rights posters, we have done one of those, that it's on a page. But the poster on the wall is not going to make the difference to making people feel safe. So it's walking the talk and saying, hey, we're here and we want to actually take you through and educate you about your rights. We want to actually know that we're going to listen to you. We're really serious about the whistleblower policy, and we've got to still work through what does that practically mean. But the fact that there's protections in place, say to people, we're going to take this seriously. We're going to look at our policies about how we actually embed human rights into our policies, and we're going to actually talk to you about how we do that. And like you're saying, that constant coming back to you, any feedback you got from us today, that sort of thing, that starts to make people feel safe, and that we do rights around here, that we want that to be happening, and that will give people the confidence to speak up, I think.
And agree with all of that, but it's also going to be about constancy and time. So, you know, you can't sort of do it one day and not do it the next, and it will take time for people to feel comfortable and to see that the complaint or the feedback that was given was acted on and nothing happened. I mean, it's going to take time and constancy, as well as being much more visible, and the constant kind of talking about it, as same as rights. It's not a one point where somebody gets a brochure once about what rights are. It's got to be talked about, it's got to be lived all the way through.
And I think I'll just pick up a point Nicky said in her introduction too. You know, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people come from a place of you know, trauma and fear and racism and those sorts of things. So we also need to be really mindful of them not wanting to raise complaints and who they raise complaints to. When complaints are raised, how are they acted on? So I think, and you know, I imagine that goes across multicultural communities as well. The other thing, I was in a community a few weeks ago in Ceduna, and they had actually, Commissioner, I was going to send it to you. I was really impressed with it, but it talked about the old ones?
Charter.
Charter, that's right. See, I wiped that language out of my mind already. What it means, and it was graphical, and it really drew me to it because it was quite easy to understand. So even things as simple as that, because when I sit here and listen to, you know, you through who are, you know, been in the sector a long time and you know the sector and you're very intelligent people, you're still using big words that even I don't understand. Yeah. So, you know, how do we break down what aged care is, what it means, and the language that we use, so that people know, and you know, is complaints a dirty word, or is complaints the word that, you know, universally we all understand? But I think I can make a complaint, I know someone's going to listen to it, and then again, if we come back to that communication, and, you know, communicating why your complaint wasn't acted on, or this is, you know, we just got to keep communicating, I think, with people and find different ways to talk about it.
I think this is a real involvement as well, like when you change the language, like from complaint to the feedback, or, you know, like the thoughts are important for us is kind of a gift, so that we can make the change together. And I think another important thing is individuals are trusted, like the familiar faces, like even in the facilities, like someone is just visiting them regularly. It might be volunteers too. I know it's not the volunteers' responsibilities, but it might be. And also, like in support at home organizations, like maybe we are seeing individuals, consumer engagement officers, like having a regular check-ins with them. So getting informal conversations and then getting their thoughts. So the complaints might be, it doesn't need to be formal mechanism, so it can be feedback.
Yeah. And this next question sort of builds on this discussion, I think. It says, the challenge is in turning a whole mindset from a large workforce who are caring but task-focused to taking time to ask and deliver needs differently. So training needs to focus on this and be mindful of an ingrained thinking and the shift required. So I guess part of the question here is, where do we start with training as an option, but where do we start trying to make these shifts with our workforce?
I think it is in training and in conversations, and I'm imagining that most of you would already have been having conversations about the changes that are coming, you know, what that means. I think we do want to see training. I've already, you know, made a bid that I think one of the things that helps with the mindset shift is actually to talk about ageism, and to start thinking about some of those things that might be infiltrating, you know, practice, and helping people to see that just because you're 80 and in residential care doesn't mean that A, B, C, D, E follows. So, I mean, I think, you know, doing those things and something that might be a bit fun and get people to think about it differently. But you do have to start, but it's not something you're going to be able to do once and then go tick, that's done.
I think it's also about seeing those shifts and trainings as not just discrete sort of elements. So looking at all of the things that you currently do and how can the change in the approach to care be sort of, you know, you've already got standard team meetings, handovers, all of those processes. How do you embed? So what happened today? How did you display this and this? How did you engage with the person differently? There's lots of ways I think that can be done really more simply, but embedding it into day-to-day practice also, as well as, of course, discrete trainings, but something that's sort of ongoing and embed that practice into current processes.
The next question is, I think, for you, Craig. It talks about whether there's gaps around support for people with cognitive impairments, and whether how are the rights of older people without cognitive capacity, family, or a decision maker protected under the rights? And given that the public guardian doesn't provide advocacy, is there a gap in support for this vulnerable group?
So, yes, I think this is where we start getting into the idea of the wishes and preferences and getting to know those wishes and preferences early. And one of the people who was on our reference group, Teresa Flavin, talked about who's living with early onset dementia, of doing a social care directive and a social directive so that her voice is recorded early on, and that gives, I suppose, authority to her self-determination about how she wants her care to be delivered. Then, though, when you've got, yes, someone who, I suppose, is looking back, what pattern did they have in their life, what history, and again, that takes time to do that. But also with our independent aged care advocates, they can advocate on behalf of the person, even if that person's not there, or there's a substitute decision maker, because we can still work with that person to do that. And there are some people who can't communicate, but it's rare. There's other methods of communicating. That's, I suppose, what supported decision making is so important, is to find out other ways that that person might be able to communicate their wishes and preferences as well.
Yeah. Thank you. So we've very quickly come almost to the end of our session, as often happens. But before we go, I wanted to ask a closing question for the panel. What is the one thing you want every provider to take away as an action to get their organisations ready? Anyone like to go first? It can be more than one thing.
So not just one thing, but underline. So start treating the cultural inclusiveness like with the leadership, not just frontline staff members. And then there are lots of tools. I mean, the government providing different free translating services for aged care providers. The government is providing free trainings through PCAC, and then Commission has the great platform for learning further. And also, like, the practical tool, yes, the statement of rights. Like, if you want to implement the statement of rights and how it's looking in the practice, so you might need to use a diversity framework and then develop your diversity action plan. So it's a great tool. And then, sorry, lastly, is it go smoothly and slowly, like when you are dealing with individuals coming from multicultural and refugee backgrounds.
Thank you, Selen. Anybody else like to give their final reflection?
You ought to go last. So, look, I'd give a plug that our network of members are out there, and they're ready to come and work with you in partnership to deliver training about the Statement of Rights, about advocacy, and about preventing abuse as well. So engage with the independent aged care advocates who will help with some of that, and also the supported decision making. So the tools are out there and are being developed, so you don't have to do it alone, and it won't happen overnight. We know that 2nd of November is not everything becomes a panacea there, but this is a journey of 18 months that we continue to work together, probably 5 years of us continuing this change that we want to see. And so we can take the time to embed. This is now about embedding this sort of change that we want to see.
Thank you.
Embrace the mind shift and work out how you can take that forward. So clearly I've kind of talked about ageism training, but equally Nicky and Selen have talked about, and Andrea have talked about other things that's about embracing the mindset shift, thinking about, training, and think about how you're already doing some of this. You've all got consumer advisory bodies, and I should say COTA's about to do a good piece of work, and I know some of you have already signed up at our table out there. We want to work with you to help you make them valuable, because we hear from some providers that they're fantastic, and we hear from others that they're not, and we hear from older people, some are fantastic and some of them it's a waste of their time. So think about what you're doing currently and how you can shift what you're currently doing that's about your engagement with older people, and try and get some of that working well while embracing and being curious about your mind shift that we need to have happen to really make sure that we can deliver on rights.
Thank you, Pat.
I think I said this last year, and I'll keep saying it, but Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are living longer. We're still not living as long as the broader population, but we are living longer. So, again, the mind shift, we do need to think about, if you don't have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in your services now, at some point you will. If you're not employing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in your services, at some point you will. So the cultural, the cultural safety, the cultural ability, all of those kind of things, you need to start thinking about it now as well.
Thank you, Andrea. Nicky?
I have a task, and that's to go back to your, go back to your organisations and establish diversity working groups, and use those working groups to look at the Statement of Rights and look at that through a diversity lens as to what that will mean, and then tap into the resources that are available to you. So we come to conferences and we get wiped out of information about the training we provide, the training our member organisations provide, and the uptake then is minimal. And so it's really a call to action. So I think it's amazing, and I always say this when I speak about the aged care sector, but I will say it here again. I think the aged care sector has amazing systems around it, particularly in regard to diversity. But when you look and sit at this panel, that all of us are here to help you, I think it's an amazing thing. And you've got the diversity framework, you've got the diversity action plans, we've got the specialist verification framework, we've got all of these things to help. And so you're not alone. And we want to be phones ringing, emails pinging, looking for training, looking for support. We've got capacity building programs, we've got coaching program, sign up. But the call to action really for me, first off, is go and get those diversity working groups together. And if you want help with those, then we're here to help you to do that and make diversity core business. It's not an add-on, and make it so that the rights are not something that you're obliged to do, they're just part of your wallpaper.
Thank you, Nicky. That's a wonderful way to finish. So thank you, everyone, for your questions. We didn't have time to get to them all, but I want to assure you we're going to be looking at them closely and continuing to use them in our work at the Commission. A very big thank you to our panellists for sharing such thoughtful and practical insights. Thank you. So we also wanted to say that we're very keen to keep hearing about all the great things that we know you're all doing and going to be doing around bringing rights further embedded into aged care. So please keep sharing your good work and experiences and your questions. And as Nicky said, if you need any assistance with us. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you very much, Emma, for facilitating that session. And I know you've just thanked the panel, but especially to Andrea, Craig, Pat, Selen and Nicky for your insights into understanding what the Statement of Rights means and what it looks like for older people and for providers and for workers, as well as from the Commission's viewpoint. So a very big thank you to our panel here today. Well, we're now going to break for lunch. That will be available in the main foyer, and just that reminder, if you would prefer to sit down at a table, there are some tables in the adjacent foyer. Can I also encourage you to visit the exhibitor booths? They have a wealth of information and resources there to have a look at and talk about. The session bells will ring shortly before our afternoon plenary. That is going to commence promptly at 1:30, where we will explore the new Aged Care Act in practice and discuss clinical governance with a panel of experts. But for now, please enjoy your lunch.